And welcome in. I guess a breaking news conference here, as it's going to be an instant reaction podcast. The story is up on Soonerscoop.com on 3. Kevin Sperry, the 2025 Oklahoma quarterback commitment, has made the decision that not only is he going to camp in Oklahoma, he's going to live in Oklahoma. I don't know which way we want to start. This is George Stoya. We're joined by Josh McQuestion as well, recruiting publisher. I guess, guys, obviously big news for Oklahoma. Their 2025 quarterback now resides in the state of Oklahoma, and he's going to Carl Albert High School in Midwest City, where I think that anybody that is following the journey of Josh throughout the spring, we went by there. It was pretty incredible. They were already going to be really, really good as the defending 5A state champion. And Josh, let's just start with you. Your overall thoughts. The rich get richer.
This is the richest get richer. This is unbelievable what Carl Albert is putting together. We talked about it during the spring tour and really through the last few days of camp. We knew this team was going to be good. This might be all-time state of Oklahoma type team. Like what they're going to do to the state feels unfair. And there are some really good 5A teams out there, and I don't know how anybody stays within 3 touchdowns of this group.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Coach Dunn over at over at Carl Albert, they are going to be extremely talented. And George, this kind of came together in the matter of, I think, a couple weeks. Obviously, the story today in tracking it has come over here over the last couple hours, but you were able to talk to Kevin Sperry Sr. To give a little bit of insight on what the family is thinking. And it should be noted as well, Rozzy, his little brother who's in the 2027 class, obviously will be joining the family as well in Midwest City.
Yeah, so from my understanding, talking to Kevin Sperry Sr., it was last week. You know, he's gone to every single camp. We've talked about that here. They were out here on Wednesday, the day between the final 2 camps, and Kevin just said, "Hey, I don't want to go home." Rozzy said the same thing, and their dad said, "All right, well let's see what we can do." And from my understanding, they had planned on moving to Oklahoma next year. They were considering that for his senior year. They didn't know exactly. They'd always planned on moving to wherever Kevin went to college. So they were intending to move to Oklahoma at some point, but this happened pretty quickly. They made the decision, and obviously they were at practice this morning, from my understanding, at Carl Albert. Talking to his dad as well today. They already have a real estate agent. Like, they're looking at houses and things like that. So this has moved really quickly, and like today, we kind of got a tip about it. I was able to get on the phone with his dad. Josh was able to talk to some folks over at Carl Albert. So it just kind of worked its way together where we were able to piece it together. But yeah, this came together quick, and I think it's a move that it's something, again, like I said, that they kind of wanted to do, and it just made too much sense for them to just go ahead and do it now with 2 years left for Kevin in high school, and then obviously Rozzy is going to be a freshman. So he's going to have all 4 years at Carl Albert. And we can go into why they chose Carl Albert, but we kind of talked about it. They're a great football program. He knows a lot of the players down there. He's a C4 guy, which there's several C4 guys that he knows working out with that go to Carl Albert. So, man, it's going to be a lot of fun watching them play, but man, I feel bad for some of those teams in 5A.
Good luck to the rest of 5A. Josh, I know that we've talked about it. You talked about it after going to see him during the spring. We've talked about it on some of the camp breakdown stuff. Just as far as the type of player that Carl Albert's getting, if maybe you didn't know anything about Kevin Sperry, we're talking about a guy that is, I think, quote unquote, made that jump going into his junior season. Obviously statistically at Rock Hill a year ago, down in Prosper, probably not what you are expecting when you're thinking about a 4-star, 5-star type guy, but his type of game, it's going to obviously translate well to the 5A.
Well, and it lends itself so well to Carl Albert because this is a kid that, like you said, didn't have the huge numbers as a sophomore. And frankly, a lot of that was born of him just running for his life a lot of time. And to Kevin's credit, when I would ask him about that, how are they addressing the offensive line? How do they build a program kind of around you? He was always super complimentary of the people at Rock Hill. So I don't know. I'm sure Rock Hill is somewhere crying in their beer right now, and I totally get it. I understand, but I don't know how they could leave with bad feelings because that kid never ran down the program, sure. Never acted like he was better than them. And I think going to Carl Albert, it just is such an easy fit because this is we talked about it in the spring. This is an offensive line that returns 4 of 5 starters, is always dominant up front, has the best running back, in the state as far as production, as far as almost any measurement you want to use. And then he's got 2 outside receivers. So I think he is a guy that can ease himself into this. He can, he's going to win vertically a lot, throwing to guys like Tristan Haynes, Trinae Washington, even a guy like Billy McDowell that I don't think a lot of people in the state know about, but is an absolute speed guy that Kevin Sperry, we watched him for 5 days of camp just drop in one beautiful deep ball after another. It's hard not to see this just being a nightmare for defensive coordinators. But the thing that I think people should also realize, in the run game, Kevin Sperry is very active. He's very capable. He's a guy that can get you 10 yards. I don't know if he's quite the athlete that Jackson Arnold is, but for those that feel familiar with what Jackson Arnold is, there's a lot of the same things in Kevin Sperry's game.
As far as relationship goes with Jeff Lebby, obviously in the 2025 class, and how important it is, we've talked about it before, how important it is to have that quarterback as kind of the central figure, the figurehead of a recruiting class. Just having him down the street from Jeff Lebby, that has to be something that I would imagine the Lebby home and the quarterback room is extremely happy about.
You would have to think, and it's worth noting, and there's 2 things I want to say on this topic. First of all, talking to people at Carl Albert, Jeff Lebby had nothing to do with this. This was a connection that was made basically because exactly what George said earlier. They were planning to make this move, and then when Kevin and Rozzy kind of said, "Hey, we're ready to do this now. Why wait the year when Kevin can have 2 years with his future teammates, do all these things?" And that can make sense and work for us. So I think that's something I think a lot of people will assume is, this was Oklahoma working. I don't get that impression at all. Sure. I don't think that's what happened. I know that the family knew that Jeff Lebby knows some people at Carl Albert, but at the same time, I'll also say that there is, like I said, I kind of forgot where my second point was there. I got lost in it.
It was going to be a good point, though. I could tell.
It was. I was ready for it. I was geared up for it. But no, with Kevin Sperry, again, you've just got a guy that, frankly, in a 2025 class in state that we know is special, you now have, the best of the bunch, in my opinion, and that's no slight to them. I think Kevin Sperry could end up a top 50 player or better in his class. I think he has that sort of potential, especially now that he is surrounded by a team that can just let him go make plays. Talking to some of the people at Carl Albert, I think that's a lot of the excitement. He doesn't have to carry this all on his back. He can just be one of the guys and let it kind of come to him on his own time.
Josh, I was going to also bring up, his dad talked about the ability to just go to campus whenever he wants and to go to whatever events. And we've talked about this 2025 class in the state, even the 2024 class. There's a lot of those guys that are on this Carl Albert football team. And you have to wonder, he's
going to share a backfield with one of those guys that they just hosted in Xavier Robinson.
Exactly. So you have to wonder, all those trips that Kevin wants to go to, right? He goes to all these camps. He loves being on campus. What does he say? He says, "Hey, Xavier, you want to hop in the car with me? Trinae Washington, whoever it is, Tristan Haynes. Hey, you want to come with me? I'm going down to Norman for the day." How much of that could that help, and maybe have a Carl Albert pipeline to Norman?
Oh, I think that is a very real possibility, and just knowing the kid and dealing with him some, I guarantee he'll be like, "You guys want to hop in the car? We're going. Come with Rousey and me. We're all that will be a thing that I guarantee he will try and do." But at the same time, he's a fairly low-key kid. I don't think it's going to become, because I could know kids in that situation that it would be too much, and they would badger those kids, and it would become a bad thing. I don't think Kevin is wired that way. It's just, "Hey, I'm going. You want to come?" And, yes or no, he's going to leave it be. But I don't think there's any doubt. I remembered what I did want to say earlier a second ago, just to kind of tie that together. The thing that is also interesting about this is Carl Albert, though a very run-heavy version, they run a very similar scheme to what Oklahoma does. And so I think that's another appeal, is that, their head coach came from kind of that same coaching tree as Jeff Lebby, and they have some similar concepts, some similar ideas. So I think that only makes it easier for Kevin to make that transition in a couple of years when, I think we all can safely expect him to graduate early and be on campus, in January of 25.
As far as just the impact and just talking about OK Preps football, biggest in-state quarterback recruit. Carrie and I were trying to think of it here as we were writing, as they were writing the story to break the news out there. David Cornwell's the first one that came to mind. Obviously, Casey Thompson was highly ranked coming out of Southmore / Newcastle, whichever way you want to go with that. It's upper echelon, though, as far as what this means just to the state of Oklahoma in terms of getting a guy in with the caliber of play that Kevin Sperry will bring with him.
Well, I'll give you one that I think people wouldn't think of, but has become a very high-profile athlete in his own right. Archie Bradley, when he left Muskogee to go to Broken Arrow from his sophomore to his junior year. So that was one that everybody kind of knew Archie was special, and obviously he went on to a great baseball career rather than football.
It's
but
worked
I think
out for him quite well, right?
Yeah. So, there was a lot that made sense there. But, I mean, that is – there have been some high-profile quarterback moves. I mean, gosh, guys, we look around last year. Shaker Isaac making the move from from Jinx to Union. There have been some interesting ones. But, again, when we went back and looked at some of the ratings and – with On3, the actual On3, internal rankings only go back so far. But you look at industry-wide, Kevin Sperry's got a chance to be, is right now the highest-ranked quarterback the state of Oklahoma will have produced since, David Cornwell in 2014. And he has a chance to go and be the guy. Sure. I mean, you're talking back to guys like Justin Fuente in the mid-'90s at Union.
As far as moving forward, and this is a question for maybe both of you, just out of complete ignorance, is there any type of OSSAA speed humps that would go into moving in? I would think not, and that's completely a question that I don't know the answer to.
I don't know the answer either.
As far as eligibility goes.
Talking to Carl Albert a little bit about this, it sounds like there was a lot of wanting to be very clear in the communication with the Sperry family of he's fine, he can come work out. Like George said, he practiced with Carl Albert this morning. And as long as it's not a sanctioned OSSAA event, he's fine. So he can go practice all he wants to, all that. Now, once the season comes around or, once they get into a scrimmage with other teams and then it becomes a little bit more official, they have to have sold their home in Rock Hill. They have to have a home in the district of Carl Albert. So they have to mind all those P's and Q's. But it sounds, like George said, they're looking at houses. I believe their house is already on the market. George might correct me on that. But they are moving very rapidly.
Sure.
And George, I'd be interested in your take on this. For me, I'm so surprised because listening to you talk and listening to the people I talk to, the stories match perfectly. There's no variance. It's very much on the same page. And guys, this all started basically last Friday.
It's wild.
It blows me away how quickly this has all evolved, at least from, I know the Sperry started thinking about this maybe a little while before, but from the Sperry-Carl Albert connection, this is 96 hours in the works.
Yeah, what they told me was they made the decision on Wednesday to move to Oklahoma. They started talking to people about what schools to look at. They contacted Carl Albert. Carl Albert was a school that came up constantly.
Sure.
And again, like I said.
rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great football program. Great school district.
And I'm pretty sure, they're familiar with several of the guys there. Like I said, I believe he's trained with some of them. They've crossed paths several times before. And the moment they talked to the Carl Albert coaches and the counselors and the school and everything like that, that's what they landed on. I'm not even sure. I don't think they spoke to maybe any other schools. So, like Josh said, this has been very quick. It was a very quick decision. These are, the Sperrys are very faith-centered people, and they talked about that a lot. And they, his dad said, "Hey, we have the means to do something to help our kids," and they felt like this was the best option for them and something that his kids both wanted to do. So they're doing it. It's sending shockwaves definitely through the state.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think just because it's Carl Albert, just because the connections back to Oklahoma, and now you look up, all of a sudden Oklahoma has their 2025 quarterback playing within state lines. It's pretty wild how all this has come together. Josh, as far as we'd be hated on by the masses if we didn't get, while we have you, Champion Barbecue, whatever you want to call it, this past weekend. It was a massive recruiting blowout for Oklahoma. It sounds very, very positive for a number of guys, even if you haven't looked up and all of a sudden it's commits out of the wazoo. I think people have got this idea that they were going to walk out of the big recruiting weekend in Norman and all of a sudden they were going to have 15 guys on board. It's still a very successful weekend. Would that be accurate?
It is one of those weekends that you're going to look back and say, oh, this was very formative in what this class became. Like that they're going to get commitments out of this weekend. I've already got, I believe, 2 predictions in. James Nesta, the linebacker from North Carolina, I think they did really well. I don't think there's any question that Ty Anthony Smith canceling his planned official visit that was supposed to start today. Oklahoma canceled that on him like this morning. Mm-hmm. That's not an accident. That didn't happen. That's not a it's not a coincidental action. So I think there's a lot of reason to feel good really there. I also put a prediction in for Caden Durham, the running back from Duncanville, that I think Oklahoma's done an outstanding job with. You look at other picks I've made, David Stone, Michael Patterson McDonald. I think that you have every reason to still feel good about those guys. I know David Stone is the one that will have everybody excited. He said this upcoming weekend will be his last official visit to Michigan State. When I spoke to David like 3 weeks ago, he wasn't sure he was even going to take that trip. So I think you can read that however you want to. But if Oklahoma's primary competition is Michigan State, I still feel good about it. Now, he changes his mind and decides to drag things into the fall. We'll see where that goes. Sure. But I still really, really like where Oklahoma is. And, I mean, we can, depending on how much time we want to spend, we can go over a whole bunch of guys. But I like where OU is. I think they had a really good weekend, even if the immediacy is not there right now.
Caden Durham was obviously, that's a massive deal at the running back position for DeMarco Murray. As far as maybe, how about this? Somebody that you didn't think that you would be feeling is close going into the weekend, but now you come out of that big, massive recruiting weekend in Norman going, now, wait a second, there might be something here. Who would that be?
I can give you 2.
Okay.
And one of them, Oklahoma fans are really going to be excited about. One of them is Zena Umeozulu, the defensive end from Allen, Texas, former teammate of Michael Hawkins and Devon Mitchell in the 2025 class that was there this weekend. Sure. I just like the vibe I get from him when I talk to him. It sounds like Oklahoma really did a nice job with him. Now, we all saw Oklahoma kind of go down to the finish line with his brother Neto and come up short, and he's at Texas, and that's where Zena will be this weekend. So I completely get if people are like, he's going to Texas. That would be my bet too, but I think it's more interesting. The guy that I think really surprised me is a 5-star, and that's Terry Bussey, the wide receiver from Timpson, Texas. Guy I had a chance to see this season. I think he scored like 6 or 7 touchdowns in the first half of the game I saw. He's just an unbelievably gifted athlete. And it felt like Oklahoma was always kind of playing from behind with him. He had developed a relationship with LaDamian Washington. And then when Emmett Jones came over, he knew him, but it just seemed like it took a little while for all the chips to kind of fall in place. But now, talking to Terry today, and I know our guy Sam Spiegelman just put up a story with Terry, a lot of great quotes from him. I think Oklahoma's right there in the thick of this thing. Now, there's a lot of A&M talk with him, and that area is usually very good to A&M, so we'll have to keep an eye on the Aggies. But I think Oklahoma went from a very much an outsider in this recruitment to a top 4 or 5 option, and they need to try to get him back on campus, whether it's for a game this fall or maybe for the party at the Palace later in the summer. Whatever it's going to be, I think there is a chance where Oklahoma maybe could surprise some people.
That certainly seems to be the name of the game. You just want to have a chance and continue to build a relationship, continue to build, I guess cultivate something that guys want to continue to come back for. And I feel like if nothing else, that's what these big recruiting weekends have become in a way is kind of an outlet to get guys to go, now, wait a second, I like what's going on at Oklahoma. I want to be a part of that. I want to be back up there. And it certainly seems like, Terry Bussey and the story that Sam Spiegelman wrote, it seems like that struck a chord with him at the very least.
Absolutely. Again, and like I said, I think And Eddie, I know you have a gambling soul, so it's kind of a chip in a chair sometimes. Like, I mean, you just need that. It's, we talk about that forever, just getting a guy on campus. And I think they've done a good job with that. And again, I know people are wanting me to say, oh, they're going to get this guy and they're going to get this guy. And that's going to happen. Like those moments will come. Eddie, I know you and I talked about Taylor Tatum. Mm-hmm. I thought that went well on a lot of levels. I think OU and USC are going to be in a real battle, especially with Michigan, who is going to visit this weekend, picking up another running back commitment. I think maybe that door starts to close a little bit. And I will say, and I've actually got to get this up on the board, I think things went very well with Nigel Smith. I think Oklahoma remains in a really good spot with him, and he very much likes that idea of, a class that has Nigel Smith, David Stone, maybe Williams Nwaneri. Like, I think he really believes, like, this defensive line class could be something that really sets OU on the right path.
Sure. And I can just add on the Taylor Tatum stuff. I know that the baseball program is extremely high on Taylor Tatum as a baseball player, and I think that there is a feeling or a prevailing thought coming out of the weekend that they like what they're offering on the baseball side of things. Who knows what USC is going to offer? Who knows what Michigan's going to offer in terms of what they could do for him playing baseball? But it's kind of like the football stuff. Adding this SEC mix, and you look up and all the teams that are in Omaha right now, or the teams that the LSU's, the Tennessees of the world, they're all from the SEC, and then obviously all the teams that hosted from the SEC as well. So that's another kind of interesting option that is out there as far as the football and the baseball stuff goes, and we'll see it in other sports as well, is that it's a very real conversation that they're having now and saying, look, by the time you get to campus, we're going to be participating in the Southeastern Conference in all of these sports. Why wouldn't you come? And I find that to be interesting. It's not so much more of a selling a dream as much of you're selling a reality that this is, on a calendar year, it's going to be here, and you're going to have that opportunity once you get to campus.
Like I said, I just think that is something that, again, the timing of all of that couldn't have worked out better for Oklahoma, to have the schedule release and then say, hey, Alabama's your freshman year, you're going to walk out in the field and play Alabama. You're going to play Tennessee. You're going to play LSU. Like, there's no more of the thing we've talked about for years, OU having to fight you just play in the Big 12. No, you're going to get thrown in the deep end. And guys like David Stone and Nigel Smith and some of these defensive linemen that we talk a lot about, they know you might be starting game one in the SEC. Like that is a realistic possibility because of both Oklahoma not having a lot of elite defensive linemen and because those guys are elite talents.
Yeah, no doubt about it. George, I know that you talked to Kevin Sperry Sr. You put it in the story. Just anything to kind of wrap this back around to, obviously the reason that we're here in the Kevin Sperry news, and he's moving to Carl Albert in Midwest City. Anything else to add as far as your conversations with him?
Not really. I mean, again, you guys can check out the story on Soonerscoop.com, but just, again, it happened really fast, and I think that the connections to Carl Albert is what kind of sold them on picking that school. And so, it's just going to be fascinating to watch. Like I said, their house is up for sale. They feel confident it's going to sell fast. And
it's a growing area there in North Texas.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that houses in Prosper. I'm not a real estate agent, but I would imagine they don't stay on the market too long.
No, and I don't think they'll have any issue finding a house here. I know that they were looking all day. I mean, he was telling me that they got up at 2:30 this morning to get down here and start looking at homes, and then for Kevin to start working out and going to practice and stuff like that. So they're committed. They are all in on this, and man, it's going to be fun to watch. I will say I'm still picking Bishop Kelly to win 5A.
Well, that your opinion here is null and void. And I feel like you would get some long odds, though, if that's the that's the route that you want to go.
I'll put my entire all my money I have, which is not a lot, on it. So.
Interesting. Well,
not really.
I've never offered financial advice to anybody, and I think that I probably shouldn't. I would not do that if I were you.
Yeah, I think my dad would say the same.
Yeah, that would not be good. If you need to know anything about the Sperry family commitment to their sons, just look at what they've done for the last month and driving back and forth from Brim Venables football camps. It's almost kind of incredible that a player of his caliber camped at every single session.
And it tells you how much they like OU.
Sure.
I mean, they don't make this move if they don't love OU and being around it. I think that's obviously the main factor behind this.
No doubt about it. All right. I think that will do it. Josh, appreciate jumping on with us here on an instant reaction podcast or YouTube stream, whatever you want to call it, whichever you prefer. Massive news. I'll throw it to you for a final thought.
My final thought is really simple. Like and subscribe. I will keep screaming it until I get to the numbers I want to get to, which may never happen. So
Sure.
people are just going to have to deal with this forever. But again, guys, the class of 2024, the stuff I'm starting to hear, momentum is building. This feels, honestly, June feels a little like May of last year when you kind of knew June was coming. It looks a little more like it's going to be late June into July, but there's going to be plenty of fireworks this summer. It will happen.
And I think that this is a good spot to stop as well, because and it'll be something we can pick up back on the unofficial 40 this week, just as far as it's kind of incredible that they continue to recruit at this high of a level, coming off of a season in which was obviously extremely disappointing for a lot of Oklahoma fans, coming off of a 6 and 7 season. So, obviously that doesn't spur what the Sperrys decided to do, but I think it's big picture wise, obviously extremely positive for Oklahoma and Brent Venables, Jeff Levy, this entire coaching staff. So this is really cool. I'm glad that we were able to get together a little instant reaction. It's something that, we plan on doing much more of in the future. Here at Soonerscoop.com with On3. So for George, for Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll talk to you next time.